The grisly realness of street violence is one of the defining features John Singleton's classic film Boyz N the Hood. It is a coming-of-age story depicting black youths trying to navigate life in inner-city gangland. It is one of the defining films which captures gang life in the 90s Los Angeles. Even today, the film serves as a harrowing reminder of how gang criminality and violence can suddenly and cruelly sweep up even the most promising youth and destroy lives. Yet even after viewing the film, few could imagine how closely life would imitate art for two young men, the Avery brothers, Shay and Lloyd II, both of whom worked on the film. Now, the eldest of the two Avery brothers was Shay Avery. His early life would draw eerie parallels to the protagonist of Boyz N the Hood, Trey Styles. Similar to the film's depiction of Trey Styles, Shay Avery was a model student with a bright future and seemingly limitless potential. Yet despite his family's best effort to protect him from street life, Shay would willingly take a dark turn towards gang affiliation. He eventually found himself trapped in the world of gangland crime and mayhem. Shay's embrace of the gangster lifestyle was brought on in large part by the company he surrounded himself with and the choices he willingly made. The Avery family. Born on October 7, 1971 in Los Angeles, California, Shay Avery was raised by loving parents Lloyd Sr. and Linda Avery. Shay was the middle child of 5 siblings. His parents had struggled greatly to work themselves out of near poverty in their early lives. Shay's father, Lloyd Sr., had built himself his own repair business, and his mother, Linda, fought her way through discriminatory hiring practices to become a senior accounting clerk at their local bank. The Avery's focus was to have their children succeed and to provide better opportunities than they had growing up on the streets, free from the ballast of street and gang influences. In this effort, the Averys spent a lot of time with all their children and stressed Christian values and good behavior. They demanded academic excellence from each of their children. Wholesome outlets such as family outings to go fishing or hunting served as a brief escape from the inner city life. During the week, the Avery children were given extracurricular lessons in swimming, gymnastics, and Little League baseball. The Averys even had a pool installed outside their home, all in an effort to keep their children off of the streets. As an adult, Shay would recall, "We were silver spoon kids. We never needed for nothing." Shay's upbringing would seem to provide the environment and tools needed to succeed. Yet, he would become one of the incredibly unique individuals to turn their back on privileged family life in favor of hardcore gang involvement and crime. Shay had a seemingly ideal childhood in the Los Angeles suburb of Windsor Hills. With its palm tree-lined streets and bungalow houses, Windsor Hills was a firmly middle-class neighborhood. Yet, a sinister shadow was just around the corner. As with many inner-city neighborhoods, Windsor Hills bordered the gang-infested divisions of Inglewood and South LA. This proximity to gang life would prove to Shay and Lloyd Avery II's undoing. Shay would later say as a defendant in court that family love was always there. "I just felt some kind of attraction to the streets." Now, Shay's downward spiral began at the age of 17 from a seemingly sensible act of parenting. His parents would enroll Shay in a bus program which prevented him from attending Crenshaw High, where he would have been mixed in with locals of ganglands from Inglewood and South LA. Instead, Shay's parents enrolled him at Beverly Hills High School, a predominantly white school that catered to the more affluent suburbs of Los Angeles. Yet Shay would still have to take the public bus from his house through some of the worst ghettos of LA to reach Beverly Hills High. Rap and his pop status had exploded by the time Shay Avery was 17, and like many youths in the inner city LA, he had developed a taste for wearing a black Raiders hat, baggy sweatshirts, and khakis. This style of dress was meant to imitate the rap artists he enjoyed listening to, but was also the perennial uniform of LA gang culture. Shay's parents would normally disapprove of the attire and its connotations, but as Lloyd Sr. said, a friend of mine made his son look dressed non-gang and somebody stabbed him on the bus. Somebody sharpened a screwdriver, put a point on it and stabbed him, paralyzed him a little while. That taught me something. I told Shay, whatever he needed to do to get from point A to point B, you do that. Shay's dress sense made him a standout figure at Beverly Hills High, an honor student with a 3.6 grade point average, but his outward appearance made him look gang affiliated. Shay would eventually remember all these little Caucasian kids thought I was a stereotypical gangbanger they seen on TV. They just idolized it. As Shay began to play up the role, his reputation grew not only at school, but out on the streets as well. Shay began to hang out and party more and more with cliques from his neighboring Inglewood and South LA, many of which had gang affiliations. Despite this, Shay excelled in his studies to such an extent that come graduation time, he was accepted to the prestigious universities of UCLA and UC Berkeley. But Shay began to be intimidated by the idea of attending university and his ability to win a much-needed scholarship and financial backing. As a fallback, Shay instead decided to defer his acceptance to university to stay close to home and attend a trade school like his father. It was a decision to stay in his familiar surroundings, which would exacerbate Shay Avery's imitation of gang life into the real world. He said, I was living kind of a double life at home. I was an ideal son. I looked up to my dad. Then as soon as my father turned his back, I'd be out doing things he couldn't have imagined. LA gang life. Shay's popularity on the street would grow from his willingness to commit random acts of violence and petty crime. His carefully crafted gangster charisma and ability to bring in girls from Beverly Hills to inner city parties would open further doors to street life. In order to solidify his image, Shay would eventually form his own clique, which he named the DGF, Don't Give a F Crew. As Shay himself explained, even this clique would not be involved in regular gang activities of actual gang involvement. He said, we don't sell dope, don't sling the guns in the way a gang does, might steal a few things, might have a few guns, but they mostly have parties and chase girls. But Shay was consciously building his reputation to be a hardened street thug. A schoolmate, Dorian Reed, will recall about Shay during this time. Shay once came to a party with Lloyd II and the First. This whole other gang is there. All of a sudden, Shay starts throwing rocks at them. The other gang was like, what the fuck is going on? One of them recognizes Shay and was like, Shay, oh, let it go. The whole gang was there and they didn't F with Shay. That's a little insight into how crazy Shay was. Shay's street credit only continued to rise. His success in the creation of DGF will only make the lure of gang life even more appealing for Shay. With the same drive he pursued academic excellence, Shay deliberately set his sights on membership and status within elite gang circles. This decision led him to his local chapter of the Rollin' 60 Crips, a division of the West Side Crips criminal network, one of the most violent gangs in the United States at the time. Shay was seduced by the Rollin' 60 status, reputation, and the ultra street credit that came with the Crips affiliation. The atmosphere, putting yourself in danger, the illegal activities, I can't explain it, he said. I just wanted to fit in with them. I wanted to be a part of the best. Shay Avery and the Rollin' 60 Crips. In 1990, Shay made inroads with the Rollin' 60 Crips, and his sustained involvement put him on a path to full initiation. If you wanted to establish yourself as someone in your hood to be reckoned with, if you wanted to earn your stripes or even give your neighborhood a name, if you from a neighborhood and you already have a reputation of being troublemakers or being the toughest, then you have to not only defend your neighborhood, but let's go over here to such and such's neighborhood and put in work without saying too much. Put in work, terrorize them, whatever comes with that. To this day, Shay never speaks of his crimes as a prospect for the Rollin' 60s. Little was known about the specifics of the work Shay put in for the Crips gang during that time, but his efforts resulted in his full initiation into his local Rollin' 60 Crips chapter, and he earned the name Blood Killer, or BK for short. Shay was welcome into the gang, but the celebration was short-lived as he quickly realized the true danger of outlaw life. Weeks after initiation into the Rollin' 60s, one of his local clique's youngest members was horrifically gunned down in broad daylight. Jason Jones, a child of only 14 years of age, was waiting for his friends by a gas station. Even deep Rolling 60s turf was no protection from drive-by shootings. A rival gang from neighboring Compton would roll up on Jones, shooting him over 72 times with semi-automatic weapons. The July 1990 slaying of Jones enraged Avery, and on a deeper level, the systematic failure of local authorities to manage any lead in the case, which was soon consigned to the pile of unsolved murder cases. This would be the first in a myriad of gangland killings that Shay would find himself mired in. Later that year, Shay's best friend and Rolling 60s associate, Terrence Ferris, was killed by gunfire while in his parked car. Shay was once again beset by anger and a sense of injustice that nothing was done by law enforcement to bring Ferris's killers to justice. These emotions were temporarily offset by the unexpected opportunity to work on the film Boyz N the Hood, which both Shay and his younger brother Lloyd Avery II would contribute. Shay's dress sense and knowledge of street culture earned him a place as an unofficial film consultant. This temporary respite from the violent unpredictability of gang life was short-lived. Only a few months after shooting on the film ended, Shay's friend and mentor Earl Little Looney Williams was gunned down by a rival clique of Rolling 60s. Intra-gang rivalries often occurred in expansive criminal networks, and the Rolling 60 Crips were no exception to this. According to Shay, Williams was challenged to a fistfight by a neighboring Rolling 60s clique as punishment for not putting in work for the gang. Yet when Williams showed up for the fight, he was met with a hail of bullets. The murder of yet another friend pulled Shay even deeper into his downward spiral of criminality and rage. Shay began carrying a .22 caliber revolver at all times. Driving in his car while drunk, Shay would find opportunistic crimes to commit with his sidearm. This would soon lead to a full-on crime spree of stick-up robberies, mainly targeting jewelry and jackets. Shay would later claim he did these crimes out of a sense of rage and indignity to the system, which allowed public murders of his good friends to go unsolved. Shay would give away most of his robbery hauls, yet continued his terrorizing stream of armed robberies. The money, the material things, didn't give me as much satisfaction as seeing people scared, Shay would claim in court. I wanted to see somebody else feel the same pain and frustration that I was feeling. The life of crime would finally catch up with Shay in 1991 after a failed robbery led to Avery's arrest. He was quickly identified and linked to 2 earlier criminal incidents. He spent 7 months in jail before pleading guilty on all 9 felony charges of armed robbery. During his sentence, court judge Charles E. Horan struggled to understand how gang life could exert such influence over a teen of such intelligence and promise. Judge Horan would ask how a kid who was not in any real way disadvantaged, a kid who has not been abused, beaten, molested, a kid who has been taken to school by his parents, who's been clothed, fed, and loved, and taken to church, all of a sudden at the age 19 or 20, decide that the family values of law is less important to him than gang values. Avery could offer no explanation except the attraction of street life. His time in holding before the trial, Shay Avery had plenty to consider. How had a young life of such promise and ambition lead here? Despite his decision to pursue a life of gang involvement and crime, Shay still respected his parents most, especially his father. The guilt and the remorse he felt was overwhelming. An adult Shay would later explain, all of the stupid nights just doing stupid shit every effing night. Just senseless, brother. From his time in holding, waiting trial, Shay would assess the path that landed him in jail. Frequent visits from his parents helped Shay realize the emptiness of gang life, a path which only led 2 ways, prison or death. As quickly Shay adopted the ways of street life and criminality, he again swore off them all. Shay Avery would make an on-the-record denouncement of his own gang culture and ask forgiveness from his parents, who even now supported him in the most difficult moment in his life. Such was the conviction of Shay's renouncement of the gangs and crime, he fully acknowledged culpability in it all. Shay would astonish both judge and jury during a sentencing hearing on June the 2nd by interrupting the prosecutor during a cross-examination. "I know I was wrong," he shouted tearfully. "I know I have to do time without a doubt. There's a lot of temptation on the streets. The attraction to the lifestyle is so strong. The peer pressure is so strong. Kids feel like they have something to prove to everyone except the right people." Over the next several years, Shay would be transported to several different prisons within the California state penal system. He eventually became a resident in a notorious Chino prison, the California Institute for Men, and was drafted into mandatory prison labor as a forest firefighter, during which he fought wildfires with other Chino inmates. Shay's time in Chino was not an easy one. Violence and gang retribution were a constant threat. Being unaffiliated with the gang while incarcerated was a prospective invitation for robbery, beatings, and rape at the hands of fellow inmates. It was Shay's savvy street smarts and intelligence that kept his head above water. A Mexican gang robbed him at night point, and when a cellmate ratted him out for sharpening shanks, Shay even spent time in the infamous Chino hole. But despite the hardships of incarceration, Shay would come to fully change his mindset and his ways. He befriended former members of rival street gangs and would take up the trade of carpentry and cabinet making. Shay fully expected to come back to a straight life and back to his family values once related. One thing he had not counted on was his younger brother, Lloyd Avery II, following him into the downward spiral of gang life, crime, and murder. As Shay put it, "When I went to jail, Lloyd was a goody two-shoes. By the time I got out, he already had a case. Only there would be no redemption for his younger brother Lloyd." The downfall of a Hollywood actor. Lloyd Avery II would eventually have multiple cases against him by the time his brother was released from prison. Even afterwards, further charges would include burglary, weapons possession, and battery. Lloyd Avery II's path towards gang life would be even faster and more nefarious than his brother's. After making a cameo role in Boyz N the Hood as the gunman who kills the character Ricky Baker, he would rise to prominence within the LA ganglands. Lloyd was bestowed an unearned street credit of sorts due to his role as a shotgun-wielding blood. Lloyd made appearances in several other films, which only enriched his reputation as a gangbanger and, bizarrely, his standing in actual gang circles. "No one could put their finger on it," says Doran Reed, the brother of Lloyd's close friend. "People that knew Lloyd were like, what the F? How did Lloyd turn into a gangster?" Lloyd Avery II's career in Hollywood films industry would be in tandem with his involvement in robbery, drug dealing, and actual gang involvement. Lloyd's descent into the darkest reaches of life on the streets hit rock bottom in 1999 when he went on to commit a double homicide over a drug debt dispute. Even while on the run from law enforcement, Lloyd would pursue his film career, attending casting calls and script readings. However, law enforcement would eventually catch up with him. In 2001, Lloyd Avery II was sentenced to life in prison on 2 counts of first-degree murder, which landed him in notorious maximum security prison Pelican Bay that same year. "When I think back on Lloyd, I think it's one of the greatest missed opportunities," Roth says. Had he been able to control himself and not commit a double murder, there is no doubt he would have been a big success. Much like his brother, Shay, Lloyd would go on to try and turn his life around while incarcerated. He too renounced gang life and instead took up the Bible. Lloyd II will become a born-again Christian in prison and go even further by preaching the Bible's teachings to other inmates. Lloyd II's devoutness earned him the nickname Baby Jesus in Pelican Bay. In a cruel twist of irony, Lloyd's bid at redemption through Christ would be the reason for his gruesome satanic death. As Lloyd Avery II had made a name for himself in Pelican Bay Penitentiary as a man of Christ, his new cellmate, Kevin Roby, had too earned a reputation, becoming infamous for his belief in Satan. Kevin Roby's story, which led to his own incarceration, was of a much more sinister nature than Lloyd II. The gruesome rape and murder of his own sister earned Kevin Roby a life sentence at Pelican Bay without the possibility of parole. During his time in Pelican Bay, Roby's penchant for performing satanic rituals in his cell earned him the nickname Satanic Christ. In 2005, Kevin Roby was transferred to be cellmates with Lloyd Avery II. Lloyd II would begin in earnest to spread his teachings to his new cellmate. Lloyd even wrote in a letter to the prison chaplain, "I know God has him around me for a reason. He knows very well that I am a devout Christian, and I pray for him to the Lord every day that he gives his life to God." But it would be Lloyd who would give up his life for God in the end. Avery's attempts at winning theological arguments with Roby would build an heated animosity in their cell. Roby would later say in a deposition statement, "He was pushing his agenda to convert me to Christianity, which led to us fighting." One particular fight would end, according to court records, with Roby choking Avery so violently that Avery's lung began to eternally bleed as he lay unconscious on his cell room floor. The autopsy report would suggest that Roby would continue beating Avery's unconscious body, causing blunt force trauma to his head. For the next 36 hours, Roby would successfully cover up his cellmate's murder, placing Avery's dead body under bed sheets, even using string to mimic an arm movement, which fooled prison guards during morning and evening roll call. The following day, the guards who discovered Avery's body were met with a horrifying scene. Roby, using Avery's own blood, had drawn a giant pentagram on the cell floor and dragged Avery's corpse onto the center, spreading out the arms and legs to align with the pentagram. This satanic ritual, Roby would say in a deposition hearing, was intended as a warning. He is next on the agenda. Once I accomplish what I want to accomplish in this realm. Roby would go to trial for the satanic murder of Lloyd II, but as he was already sentenced for homicide, was not eligible for the death penalty. From a promising family of 5, it was 2 Avery brothers who chose a path of gang affiliation and crime. But only one of these brothers would be able to escape a violent death. After the murder of his brother, Shay Avery would move to Augusta with his own family to once again turn a new page in his life. Even here, the shadow of gang life followed him. There are guys out here from Hoover Crips. There are guys out here from Rolling 60s, so they say. Despite this, Shay kept his vow to renounce gang life. He has a successful business while making sure his son, who he named Lloyd after his deceased brother, chooses the right path. Though Shay's life now follows a straight and narrow, he still keeps some mementos from his brother. The Bible Lloyd II used while in Pelican Bay still has his handwriting in the margins of almost each page. Today, Shay chooses to focus on the silver lining of his brother's life and death. He died in God's favor,